What's going on, guys? It's going to be our summary markets in week 81. We're going to talk about SPY, Qs, gold, oil, USD Jpy, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then we're going to get into our options watch list. You might be able to hear I've got a little bit of background music playing. I know you guys have asked me for a while to have a little bit of background music. I am going to try this out. The last times I tried to do background music, they said they were non-DMCA, but then they still DMCA'd me. So we'll see if it works out. If it does, we'll play this during our stream as well. Let me know how you guys feel. If you guys think it's distracting in the comments, let me know. All right, let's get started. So SPY hit our first target around 449.50. Next target would be around 452. Looks pretty strong. Nice little close on Friday. Had a little pullback on Thursday, but quickly reclaimed that. There's not really any major gaps besides that 443.50 kind of down here. So we could come back down to fill that gap. But for the most part, it's not a major gap. Like, it's not something that I'd be too worried about. But if that does pull back, don't be too worried. It's most likely a bullish support, right? Until we lose like 440, 437, any pullback is bullish. Obviously, it's a pretty nasty pullback short term, but long term, anything down to the 50 is honestly playable. But yeah, so short term, you could see a pullback to that gap fill. If not, very likely going to get 452. Next target above that would be around 461. So it looks pretty strong. So don't be too worried. Next we have Qs. So Qs is looking pretty strong this week. You have 377 is our next target. Then 379 would be the target after that. We have a nice little kind of bulldog right here where we have this curved back, pop up, and then a pullback. And now we're kind of breaking out of it. Now, typically, we look for bulldogs on lows, so like down here, not on impulse highs, right? So a little lower of a strike rate, but it's still pretty bullish pattern. Nice day on Friday. Look like you're going to get that 377 target pretty soon. Just watch for 379 right above that. And then if we have a really strong week, probably get like 380, 385 would be the one above that. Kind of the same thing on Qs here. We do have a gap right around 367. So that could pull back short term to fill that gap, but even then it would be a bullish pullback, okay? So next up we have gold. Gold had a pretty strong close on Friday. Nice little candle bouncing above the 50-day, breaking that kind of resistance around 1791. We broke above 1800 pretty easily. Now our next target would be around 1840 to 1860. So as long as we stay above that 50-day, those are the levels you would be looking for. If it breaks back below the 50-day, then we're looking for around 1770 as support. Okay, so this is going to be interesting for oil because we have a massive hurricane hitting the Gulf right now. So if I actually just read right before the stream, they're shutting down a lot of the pipelines and a lot of the production. So this should send oil higher. But we do have to wait until Monday, kind of see how it opens, see how it reacts to the hurricane. But I'm guessing it should send it higher. Typically, when they halt production like that, it does push oil higher. So watch for that. If it can break above like 71, we should be able to get 74 and then 77. If you break below the pivot around 66, probably go back down to around 62 before finding support. Okay. Next up, we have USD Jpy. The dollar's kind of been topping out a little bit of resistance on the dollar. You did have a lot of Fed talks last week. You had the symposium as well. JP said that we are not tapering just yet. He plans on tapering later in the year. Okay, so that's very bullish for equities short term, bearish longer term, right? When they start tapering. For the dollar, it would be kind of the opposite, right? Bearish for the dollar short term, bullish longer term. So until they start tapering, the dollar is probably not going to see a massive spike. Okay. It does look like it could go higher on Dixie. If we look at Dixie here, this is a very strong bottoming pattern here, kind of like a double bottom. It's kind of got that like W pattern, right? Kind of even a bulldog where we have that pop up and then a pullback. So very, very bullish. So it looks like it can break out very easily, but you have to have some good Fed news to kind of push that into its breakout. If it starts to get above like 94, that's where I'd start to be a little worried. about my equities positions. But I do have a dollar hedge still. We're down a little bit on the hedge, obviously, because equities have been skyrocketing. But if this does break above like 93, 75, 94, that hedge should be doing very well. So keep an eye on those levels. All right, moving on to Bitcoin. Nothing really happened last week. You're still consolidating. You are breaking this trend, but you're not breaking it bearishly. You're just consolidating through it. So we can go ahead and delete this and kind of pay more attention to these horizontals here. A big level that we have is kind of like this level right here, where we see that very clear SR flip. So we have like resistance, a little bit of resistance there, and then we reclaimed it as support. So that's like kind of the line in the sand right now. As long as we stay above like 46,000, that should be very bullish. Now we do have to break above 53.4, this little level right here, and then we'll be very bullish up into 56 and then 60. For now, you're just distributing sideways. It is losing a little bit of momentum, but it's mainly from a consolidation standpoint, not an actual bearish pullback. Okay. Same exact thing on Ethereum. You have a distribution here consolidating sideways. You also have some kind of SR flip levels where you have this one here, but it's kind of being broken. You can see that we had resistance, very flat top there, support on those candles, support on those candles, and now we're kind of bouncing off it right now. But it's kind of chopping through that level. It's not as exact as Bitcoin is, but very key support around 3170 all the way down to like 3070. So a lot of support towards the range low. One thing I do like about Ethereum as opposed to Bitcoin, notice the Momo here. The short term is starting to climb, but it hasn't broken positive and actually given you that noticeable climb. Ethereum has that climb. So there is a nice little climb and momentum on Ethereum right now, which is very strange because we're not really getting a whole lot of bullish strength just yet. So the Momo is kind of leading right now. So we do want to see if you can hold on to this level around 3170. You have a lot of resistance. These are the volume profile levels I gave you guys last week. Value area low POC of this kind of value up here. If we can break through this, very easily could push into like 3600, even 3800. Okay, so this is like the last resistance. That's why we're struggling so much here. But if we get through this level, there is really not a lot holding you down on Ethereum. Now, where I'd start to be a little worried is any value below 3160 or around 3060. Okay. But all right, that is the summary of markets. Make sure if you guys like the video, hit that like button. If you guys are new, make sure to subscribe. We are going to move on to our options watch list. So the watch list is pretty much the same. A lot of these names towards the top of the watch list, I'm not really watching too closely right now. They're all kind of playing out a little slow or a little bearishly. The ones towards the bottom that we'll go over towards the end here, these are the ones that are looking the best. Let's start out with these. Neo, it looks okay, but it has to get above the 200 EMA. That's where I'll start to really pay attention. Back above the 200 EMA. You could get a gap fill right around 41. Get above that, it looks pretty strong into 46. Snapchat still consolidating around that original breakout point. If you start to get back above like 76, then I'd start paying attention. Airbnb actually looks really good here. You had a breakout finally of this range, and now we're pulling back to retest it. If it holds here, like that's the low of the week, you don't see anything lower next week, that is actually very bullish. Okay, so if we don't see any price action below like 153 next week, this looks really good. You probably could get 160, 170 fairly easily. Snow, I'm not really watching too much anymore. You already hit most of our targets. We were looking for like 290 to 300. Both those targets were hit. So the next target on this would be somewhere around like 320. But you would have to get some kind of pullback to be able to trade that. Doordash still just struggling on this level. It's been a really choppy mess. Anywhere from like 167 to 195. So big chop here. If you can hold above like 195, you could get 215. So keep an eye on that, but very choppy for now. Let me actually turn this music down a little bit. So Comcast would be next here. We have a nice little breakout here. If you can hold above 58.50, you could see a nice breakout to like 60, maybe 61. Still our targets. This is taking a little longer than we anticipated. Lulu, I'm not really watching too much here. You are still failing this trend, but I do like this pivot retest here. This pivot retest is very nice. So if we can hold above, like, say, 403, 405, this looks pretty good for some price action to push higher around 410, 420 next week. Next up would be Target. I do like Target here if it holds on to the pivot around 246, 247. You do have a little bit of resistance around that 255. Get above that, flip the OTS trail, then we're talking like 270, 275. Uber, I'm still keeping an eye on, mainly for the weekly. The weekly's coming back to a major support area. You can see kind of anywhere from like here to here. This is major support. You have like massive resistance turned into support. You do have a little bit of a bottom warning on the Momo. So if we can find some support down here, we definitely could get a nice bounce into like 47.50. Okay. Next up is AMD. I really like AMD on the daily and the weekly. The weekly is breaking this pivot here, just barely closed above it last week. The daily has a beautiful inverse head and shoulders. So we have like a shoulder there, head, shoulder there, and now we're kind of breaking the neckline. So very nice close on Friday. You could easily get like 116, 117, that pivot, and then we would be looking for that original high around 123. Square is another one that had a decent close on Friday, just barely, like by 1 penny, closing above this pivot. So if you can get some price action above this pivot on Monday, Tuesday, we could be seeing a push back into like 282. Make sure to watch Bitcoin too. If Bitcoin has a nice little gain, that should push Square higher. Another one that I still like is ARK. Looks a lot like AMD. The weekly has a beautiful inverse head and shoulders. We're not too bullish on this just yet, but if you do break that weekly pivot around 133, this thing should start rocketing again. So keep an eye on that. Home Depot finally had a pullback down to this support, back on this pivot. Little bearish, honestly. If you look at the weekly, you're kind of failing this pivot here. But if we can hold above this daily pivot, this could be the low, honestly. So if we don't see any price action below this pivot next week, this should push higher into like 335, 336. So keep an eye on that. Lowe's is the more bullish one in that sector. If we see any kind of pullback on Lowe's down to this original support, kind of around 198 to like 202, that would be very bullish. You don't really have to pull back that low though. If you get above this pivot here around like 209, you could easily see a breakout into this previous high, looking at like 220. Penn, we've been watching Penn for the past few weeks. I told you guys if it got back above the 200 EMA, it looks really good, right? So back above the 200, nice little breakout on Friday. If you can hold above that 200 around 78, this looks very, very good. You could get 90. You could get 100. Definitely, probably mid to long term, at least in the next, I'd say 2 to 3 months. 100 would be my target. You do have football season coming back, so that should definitely help their user base. So definitely keep an eye on that. Same exact sector would be DraftKings. DraftKings also looks very good. If you can hold above 58 to 56, that original breakout point, you definitely could get around 64 to 66. All right, so keep an eye on that. Very, very clean chart. Nice break of the accumulation. Just has to hold above that breakout point. The defense sector is finally starting to get a little bit of price action here. 3.8% gain on the defense 3X. I still have not seen any call flow come in on these names, so they're not looking too strong just yet. I would still keep an eye on your call scanner. If you guys have one, make sure to keep an eye on like Lockheed Martin, RTX, Honeywell, anything that's like defense related. Just make sure to watch for any big orders. I haven't seen any just yet. I'll let you guys know when I do see some. Going back to our shipping plays are doing fantastic. Hopefully you guys have been making some money on these. I think our lowest winner is up 15%. Okay, so we're up like 15, 20, 25% across the board on these shipping plays. So make sure you guys are keeping an eye on these charts. They are finally starting to push an all-time high. Zim got an all-time high push. You had a nasty pullback, but it's holding this trend nicely. So as long as you don't pull back too deep, anything above like 46 is okay. You'll probably keep going. Maddox, you haven't gotten an all-time high just yet. Very, very close. Actually, I think this one has a longer price action, doesn't it? Okay, no, that is all-time high. Yeah, so very, very close to all-time high. If you can break above like 79, we're looking at like 82 to 84 as the local kind of resistance as a fib target. So keep an eye on that. And then the other one we're in is NMM. This one had a very strong candle on Friday. You nuked downward, got bought all the way back up to the close. So very strong close there. Playing out this bulldog beautifully. You're kind of breaking this downtrend too. So get above like 30 on that. We're talking about 35 very easily. PayPal looking pretty good down here. Inverse head and shoulders. If you can get back above this pivot around 283, very easily start to push into that gap fill around 301. Coinbase also trying to bottom as well. If you can get back above the pivot, same thing there. Gap fill at 278 should be very easy. All right, last but not least, big tech. Microsoft had a beautiful pullback to our Fibonacci support. It filled the gap. I talked about that last week, so hopefully you guys saw that coming. Beautiful gap fill. Now that we're holding the gap, look for that like 305 again. Apple still struggling a little bit. We did find out last week that most of this sell pressure was from the Apple CEO. He was selling a ton of his shares. I think it was like 750 million or something like that. It was a lot of money. So he sold a ton of shares up here. I think he's done. So if he's done selling, this sell pressure should go away. Get back above that pivot around 150. We're looking for 153. Facebook finally hit our target. I told you guys, as long as you held above 350, 351, you were going to get that gap fill at 373. So that target has been hit. Our next target would be around 375 to 380. Netflix also smashing our targets. Hopefully you guys made some money on that as well. I closed my short-term shares, but I'm still holding my long-term shares. This looks really good to continue. If you stay above 553, we're looking at like 570, 575. Amazon also starting to look very good. I told you guys if it held above that pivot around 331, you should start to push into this gap fill around 34.76 to 35.50. Okay? Last but not least, Tesla still struggling on that 7-11 resistance. If you can get up here, fill the gap, which has already been filled, but push that level around 717, you should be able to get 737. Fail this level here, you're probably going to get 689. All right, guys, that was the summary markets and our watch list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit that like button if you did. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are new. I do stream 5 days a week, 3 p.m. Eastern, every single day, Monday through Friday. If you guys are new to trading, make sure to go to my playlist section. There is a playlist called How to Trade. There's about 25 videos in there that will teach you guys all my techniques. If you guys want to check out the Discord, our Discord is going for $30 for 1 month right now. If you guys look at the analysis tier, it's just $1 a day. Check that out in the link in the description below. And I will see you guys tomorrow for our live trading session in Discord at 9:30 in the morning. Peace out, guys.